reflecting a little bit in terms of what our own country has done and wondered how our country would respond if there was to be that kind of look into Iraq, and particularly Fallujah.
Well, I think, any country that's, any criminal wants to suppress evidence of criminality. So it's no surprise that the criminal does that. And we certainly, many of our actions would fit that as well. But the problem is when the judge goes along with the criminal, and the jury is never even allowed to hear it, and the rest of the people don't even know what's going on.
You hear me? You talked about the South African model, and as a journalist and someone who is familiar with language, it seems that we easily say about South Africa that it was a white supremacist movement, a white supremacist colony, whatever you want to call it. Why is it so difficult for us to talk about Jewish supremacism in Palestine?
I think that's a good point. I think that's a very good point, and I have used that term in some articles. It's true. We know there's an attempt to portray Israel and, as better than everybody else on earth or worse than everybody else on earth. Instead of just saying every group, every religious group, every ethnic group, no doubt has similarities. So there are white supremacists, and there are Christian supremacists, and there are Jewish supremacists. And Zionism represents the third.
I'd like to comment on the administration stand first being involved in comparing 6 months ago and now, including their stand
The question is about President Obama's stand before and after, and about the Lordstone report. I guess in general, maybe the Obama policies on the issue. Many of us knew ahead of time that they would be what they are. Sadly, you look at who's donating to the campaign and how the system is currently working without sufficient grassroots awareness to counterbalance it. And it doesn't matter. To get to the winner's circle, to run for the president, you have already sworn allegiance to Israel. And Obama had done that, as had this, Joe Biden, who calls himself a Zionist. So, despite the fact that to many of us this was a pace of change and of less anger and more an intelligent approach, in terms of actions on Israel-Palestine, there's been virtually no difference. The George Bush Jr. and the George Bush Sr. both talked about stopping Israel at times. Especially George Bush Sr. actually stopped loan guarantees for a while because of Israeli settlement efforts. He held firm on it, unlike our current president, who quickly backed off. George Bush Sr. held firm around the wrath of the pro-Israel population in this country and was defeated in his second term. Many people feel it wasn't the economy's doing, as was the slogan that defeated him. Behind it, many people feel it was his support for upholding American principles and needs, as opposed to representing Israel. Most of us feel that a president should represent the U.S., not Israel. But we're going to have to work to get that. So the Obama, his first speech was before AIPAC, and when he was being made the candidate, one of his first appointments as White House Chief of Staff is Rahm Emanuel, who was an Israeli citizen, who in the first Gulf War, when the U.S. was at war, instead of serving with U.S. forces, he went over and volunteered with Israel. Now, Rahm Emanuel is the big money man for the Democrats. So anyway, that one of the first appointments was Rahm Emanuel, whose father was a terrorist in the early days of Zionism, an avowed self-identified terrorist. for Israel. So this was not a good sign if we were hoping for a change in policy that would be even-handed and would represent United States principles and needs.
We're gonna take,
Last
we're gonna take two more questions.
No, last
I was gonna take one, but
Okay.
hopefully they can run short of the gentleman back here. And
This is kind of a local question, but I was wondering how you feel about, in terms of boycotting and protesting, people boycotting temples and synagogues in terms of anti-Israel sentiment. That's been happening here. I was just wondering what your take would be on that.
Protesting outside.
Protesting, yes.
Yeah, not boycotting.
Well, I think